So hello everyone, I am excited for you guys all to be here today. I'm Jerry, I'm one of the students at MA Design for Social Innovation and Sustainable Futures, and I'm joined today with Ella, who's the course leader, Ching and Kate, and we're presenting the future of sustainability, the future of learning. We've separated our kind of final projects into three categories, which was the future of learning, the future of care, and the future of community. And so today we'll be presenting our own projects that we've run in these in the area of learning, and then also finishing with a bit of discussion and debate around how we think the future of learning will develop over time. So we're really excited for you to come on this journey with us. And if you have any questions, please put them in the question box or in the chat. But we're going to start with Ching, who's going to talk about his project around games and learning.
Yeah, okay. I just share my screen and let's begin. Okay, today's topic is an effective way of educational digital game. I think every adult has played video games more or less, whether it's a console game or mobile games. Most of their functions are entertainment and leisure, but with the development of technology and society, educational video games began to appear in our society or school or in a university. Educational games are games explicitly designed with educational purpose or which have incidental or secondary educational value. Yeah, it's my content. 4 steps. I divided it into 3 types of video games and give each one an example. The first is the functional game. Yeah, player will directly learn a certain skills, like programming, like drawing or something, skills. Yeah. When playing a game, taking the following one for example, the code combat. Yeah, this picture. I can just show you guys how to play this game. Just half or 1 minute. Yeah, it's the website that this game is called Combat, and Code Combat is an educational video games for learning software programming concepts and languages. This game is recommended for students and ages 9 to 16. Students learn to type coding languages like JavaScript, Python, or HTML, as well as learning the fundamental of computer science. Like this, you can see there is a character, and this has the code. The first line is move right, and the second line is move down. And the third line, I think I will put the move right. Yeah, and then run. So when player play this website game, they can just learn how to code the how to learn the coding design, or just inspire their interesting to learn the programming, because programming just is little boring when you start to learn. So I think this is a good tool to teach students to into the coding. Yeah. And the second is a wellness advocacy game. I think it's to express an idea or ideology or some philosophy, like this game. This game name is Forest Punk. It's a big game. You can play it in the Steam. It's a PC game. And the first Punk is a city building survival game developed and published by 11-bit studios. Players take on the role of a leader in an alternate history late 19th centuries in which they must build and maintain a city during the worldwide volcanic winter, manage the source, making choice on how to survive, and exploring the area outside their city for survivors, resources, or other useful items. The game features several scenarios to undertake, each with their own stories and different challenges. And like this image is as well from the Frostpunk. People have to make a choice when player is using the children to work, because in this disaster you need to do some and face some moral dilemma, and I think it's not a wrong answer or wrong answer. Only depends on the situation and your instinct. This may foster critical thinking among players. The third one is a general knowledge popularization game. Like this game, I think lots of players have played in our mobile phone. This game is a Plague Inc. It's a real-time strategy simulation video game developed and published by UK-based independent games studio, Endemic Creations. The player creates and involves a passenger in an effort to annihilate the human population with a deadly pandemic. The game uses at a pandemic model with a complex and realistic get of a virus to simulate the spread and the severity of the plague. This well-known example used to be very popular, but at this time it seems ironic. But I have to admit that many players have learned about the spread and the evolution of the virus from the first time when they played this game. Okay, as for the benefits of the educational game compared with the traditional games, the game education is more acceptable and can enhance gamers' motivation. Because the traditional education is very hard when you read some books or learn some hard skills from teacher. But game it has a lot of pictures and interaction. And the video game can assist children in setting goals, ensuring goals rehearsal, providing feedback and reinforcement, and maintaining records of behavior changes compared with the general education course and books. It's more flexible in the price, even free, and in the post-pandemic era. And the online education has made a great development, like using the Zoom University. So I believe the online education has made a greater development, and educational game can be understood as replacing teachers with AI and turning video into interactive video. So I think it's a difference with the Zoom teaching. And what's the most was looking forward to is that with the development of science and the technology, there will be more infinity. And at the same time, we can clearly see that the market and the educational games is gradually improving between the 2019 to 2023. Of course, it has a lot of disadvantage. So that's why the proportion of global functional game market in global video game market is not very high. It's only 3.83, and like in China, just 34% in China. And there are also 4 reasons for players compared with ordinary games. It's not attractive enough because when they play a game, they just want entertainment, not only the study. Because most of the company that do educational games are not professional game company, like the EA or some like the Nintendo. They have not too much the education game because they not have much profit. So the most of the educational game is not very attractive in our market. So, and for the educators, education game are difficult to. At the same time, educators also think that games will have a certain impact on people's body and spirit, like the addiction behavior or like the to harm their eye. So I designed this form to what should we do in the future? Some suggestions. Game developers should create more games that are both fun and educational, so that there will be more players and more profits. At the same time, player feedback to educators so that educators can see the obvious education effect. Educators can also provide a different choice and education space for players, such as school, family, outdoors, and so on. Game companies also need to increase the publicity of educational game to show their benefits, and the society and the school will give more social and public support to game developers. So I have made 2 assumptions about the future model of educational games. First, with the development of cloud gaming, the whole game industry will abandon the limitation of devices and truly achieve the educated everywhere. So what is the cloud gaming? Cloud gaming, sometimes called gaming on demand of gaming as a services, is a type of online gaming that runs video games on remote servers and Steam streams them directly to a user's devices. Or more colloquially, playing a game remotely from a cloud, it contrasts with the traditional means of gaming, wherein a game runs locally on a user's video game console, personal computer, or mobile devices, such as you can play the biggest game like 19 G internet game in your Apple Watch or in any small screen, because it's not depends on your devices. It depends the remote cloud. It's just transfer the video in your screen. So the second is with the development of AR and VR, the edge between the game world and the real world will become more blurred and obscured. And the environment of e-education will be more immersive. The picture above shows the use of AR and VR in educational game. And in the future, we can abandon the VR's heavy helmet because of the development of cloud games. And AR can no longer use the screen to watch, but the real holographic projection will be more attractive. So finally, I have a doubt when the future games become more and more immersive with the development of devices. Although the effect of education will be better than now, the negative effect also worse than now, maybe in the future. For example, long time to play will lead to myopia, and violent games will also depend the impact on people. The reason why most rational people are not affected by violent games is that they can distinguish the game world from the real world. But when everything is immersed in the future, is this premise still valid? So I still have a doubt. Maybe we can discuss after our presentation. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ching. I'm going to share my presentation with you all. I'm just going to put in the Instagram account that is created alongside my project in case you guys want to go and follow us there. So I'm going to just give you a really quick flyby of my project. So I'm Joe McAleese, and through this journey of my course, I've got really into research and a lot of participatory design through all my projects. So it was no different when I reached this project. And I was taking part in an Ellen MacArthur course at the time, and I was really intrigued by this quote that the leaders of tomorrow need to be system solution players. And I was intrigued because it sounded right, but I didn't really understand how that was reachable or like what you needed to be a system solution player. And so I ran lots of participatory design sessions where I brought people and stakeholders along to really discuss these issues. And due to COVID, it was a lot of Zoom calls, but that also meant a lot of diversity with people coming in from across the world. So you can see in July, and June, I ran lots of workshops ranging from what do we see as a circular system to then like deeper looking at systems thinking. And a lot of it was finger pointing at like other people, it's their fault, it's the government's fault, it's big organizations. But the thing that always came up within any session that I ran was the lack of knowledge or like education, and that if people were more knowledgeable about sustainability or systems thinking, we would be able to have a better world and future. But I was still really struggling with this kind of statement of systems solution player, and I knew it was around systems thinking, but this goes further. And so I ran a few kind of mapping sessions. I got them to do this really interesting empathy mapping as if they were a system solution player. So I could look at those kind of intangible elements that a system solution player needs to have. And that created this, through all my research, this kind of diagram, which I believe is what a sustainable system mindset would be, which is creativity, compassion, and collaboration. And then within this kind of dark area in the center, I always say that that's where nature belongs, because that's what holds all of these elements together in order to create a sustainable future. And so I created this program called Nodes, and Nodes educates people in sustainability so that they can make a lasting positive impact in society. So it's a very big target we have here, but the aim is really to take people from feeling really eco-anxious, which is really high in young adults, to making people feel eco-empowered. And that's what we need in our leaders of tomorrow. So I first of all set out on this kind of Instagram page that I've shared with you, and I've run loads of interviews with different brands and discussions with people all across the world, kind of sharing a really optimistic outlook on what sustainability and systems thinking is. And then this led through co-creation, this course called More Than Just Sustainability, and it was a 4-week course. We met once a week to discuss different elements within systems thinking and sustainability. So we looked at sustainable systems, sustainable models, sustainable pioneers. We brought people in from the sustainability industry on a very broad sense to come and have like kind of a discussion with everyone. And then we looked at sustainable futures as well. So I just have some kind of screenshots to show you. Obviously it's very difficult to kind of present Zoom calls, but this is kind of what we were at. So we ran our courses on a Miro board and Zoom, and they worked in kind of breakout groups a lot, kind of creating different models. Here they were looking at how they could make aluminium like scalpels or blades into more of a sustainable product. The next week we looked at different brands and their models, and we introduced different products, but then we looked at specific brands. Here it was Beko, who are a soap company, and what makes them good or what could they do better, and the other one was Nudie Jeans. Every week I found it really important to not just talk and not just have it on a computer, but really connect back with nature. So every week they had an outdoor activity that they would go and explore and then kind of come back to the group and share. This was where they were system mapping a area outside without them and trying to understand how the elements within our systems are interconnected. We ran with pioneers, so we had a design consultant who worked with sustainable brands. We had an interactive designer who did really awesome projects around play and how kind of involving play can help us kind of combat climate change. And then we had the founder of Climate Venture Collective, and it was a really amazing, fruitful session that got a lot of conversations going. And then we kind of used Facebook as a way of building the community, and this is where a lot of the participants shared what their independent activity was. So one of the weeks they had to go for a walk and then describe or illustrate or photograph their journey, and it was really interesting because a lot of people were going for walks in lockdown, but to really have to think about everything that was going on around them was really interesting for all of them. So when I measured impact, I did it in a lot of different ways. So I'm just going to kind of summarize some of them in this really short time. So first of all, we had we could see quantitatively that there was a positive impact when people took part in the course. And we measured this through their positive mindset, a grit scale, because grit is linked with passion. So we can see that people become more passionate about climate change and sustainability, and then self-efficacy to understand their confidence with around these topics. So the more that they took part in the course, the better their scores were. I also did some kind of in-depth interviews with some of the participants, and I made them do a very strange task that they didn't really know what to do with at the beginning, but they had to draw out the life cycle of a pencil. And I use the word life cycle because I wanted them to think about like all the steps within a pencil's life, not just making a pencil. And I found it really interesting. Quite often over the time, they didn't actually increase how many elements, but they saw more connections between the elements within their system. And I found nice on the post in the top left one is she actually drew out the entire pencil before she mapped out the system so she could understand all of the elements within it. I also thought that future thinking, it was within my theory of change, that future thinking was super important. And what I didn't expect but found really interesting was when I asked them about future thinking at the beginning, they looked at kind of the impact of climate change would have, the scientific facts and implications they would have. Whereas when we talked to them at the end of the course, it was more about like how future thinking can change the way that what people do today, and in order to present a future, it makes people want to change. So that was really interesting how it changed from kind of these facts to how future thinking can change behavior. And then the thing that I found most important and really pivotal for like the future of learning was how the participants who scored 4 or more on I felt I was able to achieve my goals I set out to achieve in this program mentioned seeing like-minded people as their biggest learning, and the idea that bringing people together is building a community can really create change, and that links with like the other groups as well. And I just wanted to kind of end it on this really amazing quote I got that said that they were a bit more hopeful about it, knowing that there are people out there like me who are trying to change the way they're thinking and their behavior, and changing other people's behavior was like their biggest learning in the whole experience. And I think bringing people together, although they all had lots of different levels of interest and knowledge, they all found kind of this unity together, and that built their confidence and their ability to achieve what they wanted to after the course. So that is just kind of my flyby of my entire project, but if you want to find out, please reach out more. And I just wanted to just say a quick thank you to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation for just introducing me and giving me that quote that kind of sent this area of research. I was with the Creative Conscience Summer School, and they really helped push this project as far as it could. And obviously UAL for running this master's that has been such a pivotal part. So yeah, let's hear about Kate's project now.
Hello, thank you, Joey. So my project is about teaching for creativity. And let me just share my screen so that you can see my presentation. Okay, you can see it now. So this is me. My name is Katarzyna Marczyk. I'm from Poland. I am a social designer, and previously I worked in marketing for 3 years. So I have a bit of expertise in that. And my journey that has led me to University of the Arts London has begun in a school in Poland, in my hometown. And this was a very important experience to me, going to school, because I didn't like it at all. And it wasn't until I went to the university that I felt that this is the right place for me. And I was in the arts college before that. And even then, I didn't feel that I have a place to express my creativity. I felt like I had to do works in line with my teachers' expectations and my professors. So I began to wonder, is it only my experience that school doesn't teach creativity, like creativity is not part of school system? Or is it the reality? Is it true? So this has been the questions that has led me to this research and this project as a whole. And so I began to test it, and I first created a survey to ask teachers about creativity. What do they think it is? And especially, does school develop it? And if not, why? And I found so many interconnected issues behind the creativity of the place of creativity in schools that I broadened my research, and I created interviews, and I went to do observations in local Polish schools, and I ran a workshop, a colleges workshop, and a focus group with children. So I had a look at the both sides of the equation, both on teachers and children. And what I found was that 41% of teachers who completed the survey think that school do not develop creativity at all. whereas a majority of the rest think it doesn't develop creativity adequately. And the same research, the same findings were from my interviews. The teachers, 6 out of 8 think that school don't develop creativity. So I began to wonder, why is that? And when I analyzed my interviews and the rest of my research, and it turned out that apart from many issues in the system that I will talk more about when we talk about the future of learning, teachers just don't have tools and don't have support and lack methods. They just don't know how to do it. And more importantly, they lack belief in their own in their own creativity. So the lack of creative confidence results in not going outside of their comfort zone and running lessons in line with core curriculum from dot to dot. So with my final major project, I wanted to provide them with a methodology that they can use to run classes creatively and to foster children's creativity, but also to have a methodology that is problem solving and that they can use to address those issues that they face every day in the education system, exactly the barriers for creativity in their classroom, in their school. So during my research, I came across design thinking, and there's an existing body of research on the impact of design thinking on self-efficacy, as well as lots of examples from around the world how it is applied in school systems. So I decided that I will try how it works in a Polish system, and I came up with Ida Akcja, which is a project that I, as a part of the project, run design thinking workshops for teachers from primary and secondary schools in Poland. These are remote workshops. During the workshops, teachers solve real challenge in education, and they arrive safely on the other side, and they go through all of the stages of design thinking process. And then afterwards, they have all the materials to conduct the same workshop for the next group of teachers. So by repeating this process, it brings a cascade effect of popularizing design thinking in Polish schools. So what they get is a toolkit. So what you can see now on the screens are the toolkits, actually the finished mirror boards from all 9 workshops that happened. And there were 43 people on those workshops. And so what they get at the beginning, you can see a video. This is an introduction video on how to use Miro, because my first test showed that it is tricky for people their age, because in Poland most of the teachers are above around 50 and above years old. So the first video is the video on how to use Miro, and then the teachers see what they will need during the project. They introduce themselves to each other, because those sessions are promoted on Facebook. So it goes to teachers from around Poland, and these people don't know each other when they enter the Zoom room. So they need to introduce themselves to each other. Then they pick a color that the workspaces they will use, and next they see a video. It's a 15 minutes video that provides them with all background information and all the knowledge that they have to have on design thinking in order to use it, as well as examples how they can use it in education. So this has been very critical. The first trials didn't have this video, and the results were much worse, a lot worse. So after that, when I tested it, it showed that they actually, because of that video, know how to apply design thinking. So afterwards, they learn what the challenge is, and the challenge is remote education for this first basic workshop. And I have chosen this challenge because it has been something that teachers were facing every day. And we were not going into details with with the research during this workshop, because it's a 3.5-hour workshop, and it would be impossible. Actually, the first version of the workshop I designed that covered all the stages and of the design thinking process and covered everything. I thought that would be crucial for them. When I counted how many hours that would take, it would take 10 hours. So I had to significantly shorten it and get rid of many tools. But anyway, so I introduced breaks, because first version didn't have breaks too, which was quite exhausting for participants. In the first stage, in empathize stage, they are doing need finding through brainstorming and dot voting about the problems they want to face in this workshop. Then in the second stage, they analyze those problems, 3 of those problems that got the most, the highest amount of dots votes through 5 times Y method. And then each of them frame a design challenge using how might we method, and then they select one. Afterwards, they dot vote again on one of those 3 ideas, and they do ideation. So the first version of the workshop, I used brainstorming, but it has proven that it's hard for them to think about something that is not a ways to behave at class or teaching methods. It was hard for them to think about more tangible ideas. So I decided to use Crazy Eights instead, which has forced them to think about something that they can one or other way see, which is tangible. So this was very successful, and it's been very satisfying to sit in front of my computer and just see them doing Crazy Eights on screen. Afterwards, they do prototyping, so they select one of those ideas from Crazy Eights. They learn out of the video, but then I would also talk again about the prototyping, and then they prototype. They afterwards discuss the prototypes and think what could be better, and at the end they are just describing the prototype. And at the very bottom there are surveys, because there actually are 2 surveys built into the prototype. There's first one, which is baseline evaluation survey, and at the bottom there is a second one, which is mid evaluation. And after the workshop, they receive the third survey, just to see if the results happened and stayed the same after a period of time. So at the end, they watch a video about how to organize a workshop for next group of people, and they have links for their own boards. So what they get after the workshop is the full toolkit like this. Actually, those are used, so they are a bit nicer, the ones that they get. And these are completely empty, the ones that they get, but they have all the videos, and also there are very detailed instructions on every step how to facilitate the process, so that they feel comfortable doing that. And also during the workshop, I'm trying to ask them to do some stuff. So for instance, if we are doing 5 times Y, the first example, I would ask the questions why, but for the second and the third example, I would ask someone, if someone volunteers or just pick someone to run this activity. And it's actually interesting because they engage more if someone from their group asks the questions. Yeah, but anyway. And these are the toolkits, and the intended impact is to popularize design thinking within Polish schools, but also to strengthen the teachers' self-efficacy, and also to give them those tools and see if they use it. So I developed a theory of change in which the outcomes are the teachers learn design thinking process and tools, that their creative confidence and self-efficacy strengthens, and consequently they use design thinking to solve problems that they encounter within school systems, and then they use also design thinking to run classes creatively, as well as extracurricular activities. And this should lead to teachers having more creative confidence and empowerment to make changes in their school, as well as the education system as a whole. Because of what I discovered, the teachers feel helpless and powerless, but in fact, they are the ones who are in practice delivering the content. So even though most of the power is in the hands of lawmakers, they still hold significant amount of power and can influence change within the education system. And there are many teachers who are doing this. Actually, they invented the ways to go around the systems, like writing different subjects in the documentation than they are actually delivering, just because they think there are better ways to deliver the content, but the system is not there, and there are many barriers. But anyway, I will talk about this later. So pupils, as a way, as an effect of the teachers using design thinking in the classroom with them, they also develop their creative confidence and problem-solving skills, which will enable them, hopefully, to become change makers of the future. Because what creative confidence entails is this sense of empowerment, this sense of feeling that you can make change and you can have an impact. So hopefully that would be the outcome. And consequently of the teachers making changes, hopefully at some point in the future, there would be improvements in schools and local communities and the Polish education system as a whole. And the measures that I used to evaluate the project. First of all, it's the learning transfer evaluation model, and the second is the general self-efficacy scale. So what I have found is that after the workshop, let me just see if I have it. Okay. After the workshop, immediately self-efficacy of 54% of evaluated teachers increased by on average 12.5%. And a month after the workshop, the self-efficacy of 64% was higher than initially by 10%. So even though this 10% or 12% might not sound amazing, but then if this is a result of one workshop, if they start to use it, their self-efficacy will increase every time. That's actually how the D-School, for instance, use this model, and how the whole body of work is situated about. So the repetition of using design thinking leads to increasing creative confidence. So I am quite satisfied with these results. And the second evaluation method showed that 73% of the teachers developed decision-making and task competences in design thinking, and 40% achieved transfer. And they only had 5 days to implement design thinking before I run the evaluation, because the Polish government prolonged the break after Christmas holidays. So actually they came back to school at 17th of January, and I sent them the survey at 23rd. So they only had 5 days, and even so, 40% of them managed to use design thinking and provide evidence to that. So this is quite satisfying, and I intend to evaluate this again and see if the number is higher, if teachers are given more time to do so. So we had 9 workshops so far, and I'm quite proud to say that on the group, the Facebook group for teachers, there has formed a community. So teachers talk with each other and share. And they also engage with me and are very interested on how the project will evolve. And they already asked me if there will be the second stage of the design thinking training. So my plans for the project are indeed that I will do another levels of this training, and hopefully the teachers will use the toolkit to train other teachers. And maybe after some time we'll actually see the scale effects and the intended impact of the project will be achieved. So that was it from me at that moment. And now we would like to talk to you more about the futures of learning. You have listened to us talk about our project, but what actually about future? And we would like to each of us first talk about our point of view on that, and then we would like to engage you with a discussion about it. So feel free to ask us questions during in the chat, and we'll answer them after we speak about the future. Joey, over to you.
Yeah, so we had a really interesting and kind of fruitful discussion about what the future of learning is, and I guess from a sustainable education standpoint, there's a lot of research and academia that needs to be done, but also like grassroots understanding of how we can kind of better train and educate people around sustainability. There's been a lot of articles around how there's currently a gap in knowledge around how to best train people on sustainability and how to achieve sustainability goals. And then we were also discussing on kind of a personal level, what do we think the future of learning is? And I think during COVID, like the future of learning's completely shifted, and I think there'll be kind of the world's got, as much as we've been detached, our world's got smaller and we're meeting people from across the world a lot easier. But also like there's a lot of like people accessing more education throughout their lives. I think Skillshare's tripled in the last year since lockdown. So that's really interesting to see how people are using their time in like with less commuters. And I guess when it comes to the courses, like my MA as a whole, I felt way more as a commuter into London, I felt way more into the London environment because everything was online. So I didn't feel like I had that distance that I had when it was all in-person events. So that's something I think is really interesting. I don't know if anyone else wants to have a little chat about the futures as well. Please go ahead and ask any questions if you do have any on our projects or what you think of the future.
Chin, do you want to go or should I? There is no one future, and the only thing we know about the future is that it's going to change. Some things are going to change, and the children that are born today are born into a world that they will face environmental issues, social issues, that the existing system doesn't provide them tools and knowledge to face. So my hope would be that the learning would be more skill-based rather than knowledge-based, especially in Poland where there are so many barriers to that. The system in Poland is mostly haven't been changed since 19th century, the education system, and the contents are still more or less the same. And the first reason that all the teachers said that is behind creativity is marginalization in Polish schools is that the education system and the core curriculum is very outdated, is too broad, it's not adapted to current children needs. As well as there is no place, there's no supports. The curriculum is so broad that teachers all the time have to rush for materials. And sadly, the school system doesn't evaluate creativity. It evaluates how well people is able to do on tests, especially in sciences and math. So the arts and humanities are marginalized. So as you can see, there are so many issues behind the place of creativity in schools. And I would hope that those will have to be resolved. As the COVID showed us, changes happen and happen rapidly. So in the future, definitely COVID will have impact. And I think it has eventually significantly improved the pace of digitalization of education. So I believe that even when children go back to school, which will happen eventually, many of the tools that the teachers had to develop now will still be in use. They have developed, from what I talked to them, many materials. They have databases of YouTube videos they can now use in lessons. So they will probably remain using that, which is good because it's more adapted to today's children. But the COVID will have also impact on people's mental health, because for a year now they haven't had much contact with each other. So today in the discussion we started to think, well, we don't have research for that, but we wondered whether communication skills of children will not decrease or vanish. Probably decrease, and how does it impact mental health. So anyway, my hope for the future would be that schools will adapt to changes that are yet to come and the world we are facing now. And the education system will be more skill-based rather than knowledge-based.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, my internet just broken before. So my future, I hope I want to explore more possibility of the business of the educational big game, because if one tool have not too much the money to support, it's hard to develop. So yeah, and the second purpose is to explore more the social support and the government. In China, it's very special and weird, because the government is really concerned the social impact of the video game company. So and the society and the people still has lots of stereotype for the video games, especially like the elderly generation, like our parents. So I want to change this kind of stereotype and to pursue more the social support for the educational game. And yeah, and maybe it has lots of space to develop.
That's great. I just want to open it up. We've got a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we'll kind of just babble on until the time. So please go ahead and just give us some questions. But I think we had a really good talk about like how important, and I think my research as well like showed how important building a community is. Even in COVID, it's really important. Part of learning is bringing people together and finding those commonalities that they have. And I think you found that as well, probably Kate, in your project, about how important that is, and how, although COVID is going to be an impact, has it also shown the need for people coming together?
Yeah, definitely. Moreover, what we talked about this morning, I think it's very crucial to emphasize that there needs to be systemic changes in education, and both what your project is about sustainability, and as you said this morning, we don't have existing research how to best teach that to children. So there's a wide probability for us as the young designers to go into that field and find out how to do it. And also in terms of education systems as a whole and creativity and empowering children, bringing them up with skills that entails problem solving, teamwork, collaboration. I think for that also what we need is systemic changes. Everything is interconnected within a system. So but then, having said that, I don't think that relying on the lawmakers to make changes is the only viable way. I think the small impacts we can do from bottom up is also significant, and as long as you impact some people, it's still an impact and it's still valuable.
Yeah, that's great. I think Ella's asked us a question saying, do you have reflections on the role of learner and teacher? Are they different? And I think Ching should be the first one to answer this, because you have a really interesting view around AI.
Okay, so the teacher, I think the human teacher, the most the advantage of a human teacher is physical interactive with students, because it might need to make student feel the this kind of a close the interrelationship relationship, and but the AI maybe it's a really intelligence, and but it has its code. It has not too much emotion to let a student to feel. So I think, but the technology is hard to detect. Maybe after 15 years or 16 years in the future, maybe the AI has some kind of the human body or has some kind of emotion, and the children is hard to recognize it's AI or it's a really human teacher, but maybe adult can recognize. So maybe in the future, in the children education, the AI might has a lot of space to develop, but maybe in the university education, it's hard to put the AI teacher to educate the colleague students. Yeah, I think.
In terms of schools, I would like to add to that. In terms of the role of learner and teacher, I think those already blur. So many teachers that I interacted with during the project mentioned that they learn now from their students as much as the pupils learn from them, in terms of new technologies, in terms of keeping up with the modern world. I think this relation is really blurred. It's really blurring, and it should be. We should resign from this view of a teacher that is a perfect person that knows everything. And it has been also stressed during the interviews. Many teachers said that for many teachers, for many pupils, teachers are portrayed as those people who know everything. And if they say something is like this, it definitely is like this. Whereas teachers are also human beings. So it should be more allowed for them to say they don't know things as well. And to make this connection more human and more based on partnership rather than rather than I don't know the word. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah, we have a question. It's around how do we reconcile into the future the inequality around access to learning? I think from my project and my learnings of the project, I think we're always gonna have there's always going to be a struggle to allow everyone to access learning, because that's just the way of the world. We're ever adapting, and so therefore it's always there's always going to be inequalities, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I think it's something I've always been questioning. But what I found really amazing that I wasn't expecting was the diversity that I got that I probably wouldn't have achieved in an in-person course. I had people globally, from India to South America to Canada, all involved in this course. And I just thought that was so amazing to kind of have that, and I think that added so much richness to both the research phase and the other and the actual course itself. But actually, when I was looking into kind of access and things, it's amazing to know the percentage of people that have actual access to phones. So I think it's just adapting and allowing a lot of different ways in which people can engage with the materials. I didn't make everyone come to the live sessions because some people's internet went right or they had life responsibilities. So I made the resource accessible after, and this allowed a lot more people to access it in their own time or reflect back on it. So that was just one of the ways I kind of influenced it. But I think we will kind of wrap up. I know that there was one more question around what do we see the biggest challenge? Kate, do you want to just quickly answer that and then we will finish up?
Yeah, sure. Just to build on your answer, I think COVID actually changed a bit the inequality equation of education, because it has opened the world significantly. So at the moment, you have access through internet to courses, to resources that wouldn't be available because if it wasn't for COVID. And so it doesn't solve the problem. It's just well, unintended consequence of the situation, which is positive actually. And to talk about the challenge to the future of learning, I think change is always the most challenging in systems. So in systems as complex as education system, making changes takes time. It's the same with corporations, but it's still on a smaller level. We have lawmakers, we have many stakeholders who have to agree on things. We have processes that are in place. So change within system is the most challenging. But having said that, it's not impossible. And I think the importance of bottom-up initiatives is very crucial to show lawmakers what people are after, what people need and want.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you everyone who attended today's session. I hope you found it really interesting, and I look forward to seeing you guys at some other events over the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.